Western. This is the most famous and iconic front of World War I. The Western Front was a continuous 700-kilometer line of fortified trenches, barbed wire, and machine gun nests that stretched from the North Sea coast of Belgium down through France to the Swiss border. It was here that the armies of Germany faced off against the armies of France, the British Empire, and later, the United States. This front was defined by brutal, static trench warfare, where massive artillery bombardments were followed by costly infantry charges over the top, resulting in horrific casualties for minimal territorial gain. The battles of the Somme, Verdun, and Passchendaele defined this meat grinder. Eastern. While the West was a static war of trenches, the Eastern Front was a vast and fluid war of movement. Stretching from the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south, this front pitted the Central Powers, primarily Germany and Austria-Hungary, against the Russian Empire. The immense distances and less dense railway networks prevented the establishment of a continuous trench line. Instead, the fighting was characterized by large-scale encirclements, rapid advances, and massive battles of maneuver. The brutal conditions and immense casualties on this front ultimately contributed to the collapse of the Russian army and the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. Italian. This was a brutal and unforgiving mountain war. After Italy joined the war on the side of the Allies in 1915, this front was opened along the mountainous border between Italy and Austria-Hungary. The fighting took place at high altitudes in the Alps, with soldiers battling not only each other but also the extreme cold, avalanches, and treacherous terrain. The war here was largely static, characterized by a series of 12 bloody Italian offensives known as the Battles of the Isonzo, as they tried to push the Austro-Hungarians back. Balkan. This is where the entire war began. The conflict started with Austria-Hungary's invasion of Serbia in 1914. This front was a complex and shifting series of campaigns that engulfed the Balkan Peninsula. It saw the initial heroic defense of Serbia, the entry of the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria on the side of the Central Powers, and the ill-fated Allied landing at Gallipoli, which was an attempt to knock the Ottomans out of the war and open a supply line to Russia. The fighting here was brutal and involved multiple armies across a complex geographic and political landscape. Dardanelles. This was a costly and ill-fated Allied attempt to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war with a single, decisive blow. The plan was to force the Dardanelles Strait with naval power, capture the Ottoman capital of Constantinople, and open a sea route to supply Russia. When the naval attack failed, a massive amphibious invasion was launched on the Gallipoli Peninsula in 1915. The invasion was met with fierce Ottoman resistance, and the campaign bogged down into a brutal stalemate of trench warfare lasting most of a year, with Allied troops, especially those from Australia and New Zealand, pinned to narrow beachheads under constant fire. Macedonian. This front formed in the Balkans in October 1915, when Allied forces landed at Salonika while the Gallipoli campaign was still ongoing. A multinational Allied army, based around the Greek port of Salonika, was established to support Serbia and put pressure on the Central Powers from the south. For years, this was a largely static front, with armies dug into trenches in the mountainous terrain of northern Greece and Macedonia. It was a diverse theater, with British, French, Serbian, Italian, and Russian troops fighting against the forces of Austria, Hungary, Germany, and Bulgaria. The final Allied offensive here in 1918 led to the collapse of Bulgaria, hastening the end of the war. Middle Eastern. This front was a series of campaigns fought across the vast territories of the Ottoman Empire. In modern-day Iraq, British and Indian forces fought their way up the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to capture Baghdad. In the Sinai and Palestine campaign, British, Australian, and New Zealand forces advanced from Egypt to capture Jerusalem and Damascus. This front is also famous for the Arab Revolt, a guerrilla war led by Arab tribesmen, famously advised by the British officer T.E. Lawrence against their Ottoman rulers. Caucasus. This was a brutal, high-altitude front, where the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire fought for control of the rugged Caucasus mountain region. The fighting was characterized by large, sweeping campaigns across punishing terrain and in extreme winter conditions. This front is infamous for the immense suffering of both soldiers and civilians. Fighting on this front, especially after Ottoman defeats in early 1915, helped intensify Ottoman leaders' suspicions that Armenians might align with Russia. In 1915, the government ordered mass deportations that became the Armenian Genocide. African. World War I was also fought across the continent of Africa, primarily in the German colonies, in a series of separate and distinct campaigns. In German Southwest Africa, modern Namibia, South African forces quickly conquered the German colony. In German East Africa, modern Tanzania, however, a German general named Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck led a small force of German and African soldiers in a 4-year guerrilla campaign, tying down a vastly larger Allied force until the very end of the war. Asia-Pacific. While the main fighting was in Europe, World War I was a truly global conflict. In the Far East, Japan, honoring its alliance with Great Britain, quickly moved to seize German colonial possessions. The most significant action was the siege of Tsingtao, a German-controlled port in China, which was captured by Japanese and British forces. In the Pacific, Australian and New Zealand forces swiftly captured Germany's island colonies, such as German New Guinea and Samoa, effectively eliminating Germany's presence in the region within the first few months of the war. War at Sea. This was the global naval front. It was dominated by the British Royal Navy's blockade of Germany, which slowly starved the German economy and population, and Germany's counter-blockade using its deadly submarines. The German campaign of unrestricted submarine warfare, attacking merchant and passenger shipping without warning in declared war zones, was a primary factor behind the United States entering the war in 1917. The only major fleet-on-fleet battle of the war, the Battle of Jutland, ended in a tactical stalemate but a strategic British victory, as the German fleet never again seriously challenged the blockade. Thanks for watching. Which World War I front do you think had the biggest impact on how the war ultimately ended? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.